You are now listening to the Going North podcast with your host, author and speaker, Dom Bregman. And every Monday and Thursday, you're going to hear the voice of a different author share their stories, expertise, and their struggles that they had to overcome in life to leave you inspired to get more out of your life. Be sure to not only listen to this episode, but share with others, connect with the authors, and always advance others to advance yourself. Now let's get on with the show. Here we are on another round of gratitude on the Going North podcast. I'd like to thank this good guy right here, known as the one, the only Nick Deplich. We've known each other through Toastmasters, being in district leadership, him as division director, and him just basically being a mentor in Toastmasters as a district leader, and watching him being so well organized and professional and carrying himself in such a great way, and being a young guy at that has a family of his own and just out there to do the best that he can to get out of life that he can. And it's really one heck of an awesome thing to know you, man. So I'd like to thank you so much for your support, for being a part of the STC Elite, the Stay the Course Elite team, for launching this book and helping launch it to bestseller status. I could have never done it without you, as well as many others, but this particular moment of gratitude is specifically for you, man. So thanks a bunch. And today on the Going North podcast, where we bring you fabulous people from all over the world who not only write books but inspire others to live their best life and have overcome some trials to get to where they currently are, to inspire you to do something great with your life too. And today is no different, because we got a doctor in the house today, in the podcast audio house. This wonderful author right here is a dual certified professional co-active coach. And if I'm not mistaken, you're actually part of the Forbes Coaches Council, right?
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Woohoo! That's right. When it comes to Going North podcast and Forbes, you got to bring some bright folks right here. She's also a certified Riso Hudson Enneagram teacher and International Enneagram Association certified professional and accredited teacher. And she's also a speaker and a highly regarded influencer in the leadership field. And this lady is so well educated because she holds a doctorate in epidemiology from Harvard University. Harvard, y'all. So we have a Harvard graduate on the podcast, and she's the first, which is freaking amazing. And this wonderful lady right here today, she coaches leaders to uncover the truth of who they are so they can live and lead from their highest potential. And this wonderful lady I am honored to have today is the one, the only, Dr. C.H. herself, Miss Catherine Hayes. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm well, Dom. Thank you. Happy to be here with you.
Oh, yeah, that's what the H in Hayes is, because I'm happy for you to be on this podcast. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Especially a high-performing lady like yourself. Don't worry, there's no weed reference for that one. Well, never mind. I kind of made it already. Never mind. Okay, elite performing lady like yourself. Let's go with elite. There we go. Oh, man. Whew. Well, as with all introductions, I'm probably missing some things, so mind filling in some cavities where I missed some fillings.
Well, I am actually also a dentist. I started my career by being a dentist and an epidemiologist, so a public health dentist, which isn't one of the more common specialties of dentistry, but what we do is, instead of treating the individual, we treat the community. So, for example, develop programs for inner city school children or elders or the disabled. So develop programs for the community. I have a dental degree, a master's and a doctorate in epidemiology from Harvard, and spent really the first chunk of my professional life in research and academics.
Oh, yeah, getting all sorts of knowledge. All sorts of knowledge.
Yeah. And then went on a deep kind of spiritual path, and there's a whole new area of knowledge and understanding and insight. I once had a teacher who said, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, because there's a whole other area that's opened up to you.
Amen to that. Amen to that. You are adulting and not kidding with that one. That is so true. It's like, oh man, I do not know everything. And you know what? It's probably a good thing. Well, and the beautiful thing is that with all this education, you had a rough beginning, you were able to turn that around. So how's it feel?
Yeah. Good. I mean, I feel very grateful. And, you know, I grew up in the public housing projects in Boston. I lived there till I was 22. And, you know, but when you're young and you're living in the projects, you don't realize how different that is. And I think I had two kind of pivotal experiences where one was I went to high school. I was in a suburb of Boston. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. And when I started to visit the homes of my classmates, I saw, wow, they live in a house, they have their own bedroom, they have their own bureau. It was different. But then another experience I had when I was 19, still living in the projects, I had gone to dental hygiene school before dental school, and in my senior year, it's a 2-year program, I was invited to participate in a program in South America providing public health services, and there were surgeons and doctors as well. And when I got there and saw the degree of poverty, I was blown away. And what also struck me was that the people that I encountered there were amazing people, and they were happy, and I think that they really didn't realize, like I didn't as a child in the projects, what was out there in the world. So they had a different level of happiness than so many people who strive for achieving or acquiring. Their happiness was very internal, and also the families were very close, so they had a lot of wonderful ways of living that taught me a lot. And it was really a life-changing experience for me. And I remember coming home from that and going back to my, apartment in the projects, and I remember taking a hot shower and having a glass of milk, and I felt like, wow, this is luxury. And I realized that, wow, it would be so good if people could see how different parts of the world, how people live, so that people could appreciate what they have, and then maybe also try to do something to contribute to the world, so that a lot of these things could be changed, so people don't have to suffer so much.
There you go, right there. There you go. And changing the world for the greater good indeed, and letting everybody know that everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that comes from the title of my book, Everything's Going to Be Okay. It's not just a trite statement. It actually comes from an experience I had as a young girl. I was 6 years old, and I was walking through the projects to school by myself. And, of course, now looking back, I have a 5.5-year-old granddaughter. I can't imagine her walking through anywhere by herself, but that's just the way it was. And I remember walking to school this one particular day, and I had this very profound, I would say it was like a sense of you get when you get an intuition, like you get a thought that comes through you. But this thought passed through my whole body, and I remember I got chills, and the thought was, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And I remember just standing there feeling, wow, it's going to be okay. Like I totally trusted that thought. I believed it was absolutely true. I still to this day do. And it changed my life because I held on to that thought. And when things were difficult, which they often were, I would just tell myself, remember, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And so that was really a really pivotal experience in my life. And then, school was my safe place. So I was always a good student. So I worked really hard in school, and I was, class president, all of that. School was my life, really. And I worked very hard and got all these degrees and went to Harvard, and I was a full-time faculty member at Harvard when I had my next, if you want to call it, epiphany, or that kind of really, that thought that passes through you like a thunderbolt. And I was working full-time at Harvard, and this one particular day, and I don't remember the details, but there were people that witnessed what happened, but I fell. My dog got excited to go to the pet store, and there was black ice, and for those of your listeners who don't know what that is, you don't see it. It's a very thin sheet of ice on the pavement, and you don't know it's there. And what happened was he got excited to go to the pet store, and he pulled on the leash. I had lost my footing, and I fell backwards and landed on my head. Now, I don't remember any of that, but there were witnesses because I was knocked unconscious. And when I came to, when I started to wake up, first of all, when I was still out, I actually had an image of colleagues of mine having a meeting about a research project. And I thought, well, that's confusing. And when I started to wake up, everything was dark. I couldn't see anything. And I was numb to the tip of every finger and the tip of every toe. And I thought, am I paralyzed? Am I dead? I was so confused. And this very kind gentleman was leaning over me asking if I was okay. And I couldn't speak. I tried, but no words would come. And eventually he sat me up on the sidewalk, and I looked in my left hand, and I had a dog leash and a collar, and I said to him, well, that looks like a dog leash. Do I have a dog? I mean, I was just totally out of it. But what happened as I was coming to was a very profound thought, just like the thought when I was a little girl. But this time the message was, it's time to change your life. And I was like, what is that supposed to mean? I was so confused. I mean, I'm like, what? So anyway, long story short, went to the hospital. Fortunately, I didn't have any bleeding in my brain. I had some inflammation. I had a very bad concussion. And, for the first time in my life, Dom, I could not work. So I had started earning money as an 11-year-old with a paper route, and then worked every summer when you're old enough to work. I just worked my whole life. And I couldn't work. I couldn't read. I couldn't sit at the computer. And the doctor said, you have to take at least 2 weeks off. I think that turned into a month. But that very first day at home when I wasn't working, and as I said, I couldn't read or do anything. So it was a very restful day. Friends came over, brought soup. I took my dog for a walk. And at the end of the day, I thought to myself, wow, this was actually a really nice day. I didn't do anything. And I was confused about the thought, it's time to change your life, and I didn't say to myself, well, I better go change my life now. But it didn't really matter what my conscious mind was thinking, because there was some part of me that knew what to do, and I just started following just a very deep inward journey. Like, who am I really? Why am I really here? What's my purpose in this world? And that guided me to the Enneagram work. My teacher, Russ Hudson, who wrote the foreword for the book, and Don Riso, who sadly has passed away, but they were my two Enneagram teachers, just wonderful human beings who taught the Enneagram, and Russ still teaches the Enneagram in a very deep way that allowed me to see that my life was really about trying to prove myself to my mother that I had value and worth, so I would achieve. But then I lost connection with my own heart and what I really wanted. And actually what I believe that I'm here to do is to help people find their true north, if you will, their center, their guiding light. And I hope that my book is something that will help people to find that in themselves.
Oh, yeah, and it's a fabulous book indeed. Did a lot of underlining, and it's probably the first book where I actually went back and took the Enneagram test last week
good.
when I finally got it. So yeah, because I heard about it because, funny enough, a library circulation department manager talked about it. Was like 7 habits of highly effective people. Like, everybody always talks about that. I prefer the Enneagram. I'm like, Enneagram? And then I get your book, and then I was like, oh, okay. Oh, well, wow, all right. It's like, yeah. Indeed, took a test, and there was some good stuff indeed. Yeah, funny enough, got a Peacemaker for my highest number or strongest number.
Nice. Well, do you want me to talk a little bit about what the Peacemaker is?
Would that be helpful?
So think about, let me give you a large view here for a moment. Think of the newborn infant. When an infant is born, they're just pure essence. They're pure joy, light, love. They don't have a personality. They don't need a PhD for us to love them. They're not getting angry because they're not getting fed on time. They're just living in this state of trust and knowing that all will be well. And they don't sense that they're they know that they're connected to everything. They're connected to their mom. They're connected to the world around them. Well, the theory behind the Enneagram is that as our ego or personality, and I'll use those interchangeably, develops, and each one of us as a human being develops an ego and a personality. It's part of normal human development. It starts pretty early in life. So the theory is that underlying these 9 personality types is a perceived kind of disconnect of something from that pure nature that we are born with. For the 9, the sense of disconnect, and this is all unconscious, Dom. It's not like we are walking around knowing that this is happening, but it's part of our development. So the disconnect for the 9 is from that sense of oneness or connectedness. So the personality is trying to recreate that because there's a perception that it's gone. So the peacemaker is really about keeping the connection. These are people that are kind and gentle, and everyone wants to be around them. Everything is, steady state, peaceful, except for maybe once every 30 years, and then there's a volcano that erupts because someone didn't put a cap on the toothpaste or something,
30 years.
Because their connection, there's a sense of they don't feel their anger. Anger is a normal human emotion. I'm not saying we should act it out, but we can feel it and process it and let it be there and then let it dissipate. For the type 9, feeling anger feels like, and again, this is unconscious, but it feels like a real threat to that connectedness which the personality is longing for and trying desperately to recreate. What I love about the Enneagram is once we see that about ourselves and we see that that's just our personality, it's not all of who we are, we can let it go. So for my case, the type 3, the overachiever, the disconnect from true nature or essential nature was a disconnect from a sense of value. Every human being has value. You don't have to do anything. It's your very being that has value. But for the type 3 personality, that sense of value is ripped away. Again, unconscious. But the type 3 is then going through life trying to recreate a sense of value. So wouldn't that make sense that, I went from, being this poor kid in the projects and worked my tail off to get all these degrees. And really that was just my personality trying to prove that I had value. But underneath it, there's so much more to who I am. And actually my heart is really my driving force in my life. But as the type 3 personality, these are people that get very busy, very accomplished, and they often disconnect from their heart. So for me, a big part of my journey inward was reconnecting with my heart and following what my heart really wants.
Yeah, it was great you're able to find that after that whole period of, I guess, the universe wanting you to rest your body in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think out of all the chapters in your book that I've read, I feel like that one resonated with me the most personally.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What resonated about it?
I guess it was the fact that it's always so go, go, go. It's like trying to prove yourself to the world in a way. It's like the achiever was coming out in a way and just doing all these things and trying to manage everything and keeping everything in harmony.
Yeah.
And it just basically got to me. I was like, oh, nope, just go to the bed and then snore. Yeah, and it's like, and the bookstore's like, man, you must be tired. Like, you snored. I'm like, snore? I didn't even know I was a snorer. Like, yeah, you snored. You were like a lion with that. That's how tired you were. I'm like, oh, okay. Yes, but yeah, I'm like, yep, that was so me at one point. And I was like, a couple of years ago, I was like, yep. Trying to work 170 hours in a 168-hour week. Yeah, that didn't work out too well.
Exactly. Yeah, well, the 9 and the 3 are actually connected on the Enneagram, so it's not uncommon for 9s to get very, very busy.
That's right. It's like sleep. That's the cause of death. No thanks. I'm going to keep on charging. I'll give you that Red Bull. And then a few days later, you see ghosts, and then you think you're on the moon, and then you wake up as a tree, and then things just go south. Let me stop. Oh man. Well, it's fabulous, though. So able to take all that pain, then go to a wonderful seminar with Russ Hudson, and then actually become a coach through the Institute. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first met Russ, it's interesting because I had gone to a couple of weekend workshops about the Enneagram here in Massachusetts. I want to say in the early to mid 90s. And I found it fascinating, but no one really had ever heard of the Enneagram, and you try to talk about it, and so it kind of went on the back burner. I also had mistyped myself. One of the things with the Enneagram is that, our ego, our personality doesn't often want to be called out. So sometimes we don't want to look at the type that we are. I would not even give it a glance that I was a type 3. And when I went to the first weekend workshop with Russ with some friends, and I didn't know Russ at the time, and friends said, "Oh, we're going to go to this Enneagram workshop. Why don't you come with us?" And I said, "Oh, great, sure." So it was just a weekend getaway, and it was in the middle of winter, and it was in this far northwest part of Massachusetts, kind of the corner of Massachusetts where Massachusetts, New York, and Vermont meet. And it was very cold and very icy, and we were walking out of the cabin to go to dinner at the retreat center, and there was a lot of ice, and my body just, when there's ice, it's an unconscious fear. It's probably some PTSD, like my body just doesn't move. So my friends, were holding me by the arm, and I had this realization that it was actually 1 year to the day from the accident that I met Russ Hudson at this workshop. So that felt pretty profound. When I got to the workshop and Russ started teaching, I thought, wow, the way he was teaching it, I could sense the 3 in me more, because he taught with such a deep level of compassion, no judgment. And serendipity would have it that Russ was actually assigned to our cabin, so it was me and my 3 friends and Russ, so I got to talk to him even more. By the end of that weekend, I said to him, I'm a type 4, but I think I've had to live my life as a type 3. And he just went, He never likes to tell people what their type is because it's your own journey. I got back. I was still teaching at Harvard at the time. I got back to my office that Monday, and I went online to find his book, because he mentioned his book, because I felt so constricted after coming from this kind of vast, deep experience of, self-inquiry, to then come back to just really living in my head and not in my heart. And I just started to cry, and I thought, well, let me find his book. So I went online to find his book, and I saw on the website that he had other workshops. And in fact, he had workshops that were longer than weekends. They were a whole week. So I thought, well, let me see when the next one was. And it was 6 weeks away, and it was in San Francisco, one of my favorite cities. I had this has never happened to me before or since, but I had an open airline ticket to San Francisco. I had been doing some consulting for a law firm, and they had bought me a ticket to come out and testify at a trial, but in the meantime, they settled the case, so I had this airline ticket to use to go to San Francisco round trip. So
nice.
I signed up for the workshop. Yeah. And that workshop was life-changing, because the way Russ, he spent like a whole afternoon on the type 3, and I have to tell you, I've never, to this day, not before, not since, have I cried so deeply. There was such a deep sense of sadness for, at that point, I had lived my entire life to prove my value, to prove my worth, and I didn't know it. And I wasn't living the life that I was meant to live here. And it really changed my life. It was an amazing experience.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Heads and tails, all the change of life. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, and I guess it's kind of a telltale signs, like all that pain that you're probably holding in for all those years just came out in that one moment, probably.
Yes, that's it. I think that's very true. Because for type 3s, they stay very strong and kind of power through everything in life, which I certainly did. And still do to some extent. I have to catch myself, The personality is always there. It doesn't go away, but we can be more present to how it shows up in our life so that it doesn't run our entire life, so that we have some freedom from it.
Yeah, and that's actually a good thing that you're actually aware of it now, and And that actually is probably more a gift than anything else. So that way it's like, all right, you're aware of one thing, and then you just know how to deal with certain situations, or you can probably like sense from an inner perspective, like, oh, sure, something's going on here. It's like, wait, why am I so tired all of a sudden? Like, oh, okay, now I know why.
Exactly, exactly. You know, my teachers, Dawn and Russ, used to always say, and it took me a long time to really grasp this, but they always said the best way to, you know, open up to the truth of who you are, move up these levels of health, is to be present. And I thought, what are they talking about? But really, I finally grasped it and experienced it, just noticing our reactions and our behaviors and bringing compassion to ourselves. There's no judgment here. What I love about the Enneagram is that it's all about compassion, compassion for ourselves, compassion for others, so that we can live truly more peacefully and harmoniously, but from a place of truth. So as I observe, you know, if I fall into this, for the red flag for the 3 is doing without being. So if I just, almost like a robot, got to do this, got to do that, and then I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, slow down, you know, be present in, you know, the doing, so that you're not just acting in a disconnected kind of robotic way.
That's right, because humans can act like machines for only so long.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. Yeah. That's when that oil change needs to happen, among other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And I love the fact in this book that, I guess that kind of goes with this particular passage. I think it was an introduction that mentioned how truth is an ongoing felt contact with our bodies, hearts, and minds that opens us to those deeper dimensions of human experience where real meaning and fulfillment can be found.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's another thing about the Enneagram is that there are 9 Enneagram types. The theory is that we all have all 9 types, but one is the predominant type. There are 3 types that are mainly in the belly or body center, 3 types in the heart center, 3 types in the head center. But here's the truth is, if we can be present and grounded in our body, if we're present in our body and feeling our body, like right now as I'm sitting, I'm really feeling my feet on the floor, my body in the chair, feeling really grounded. When we're present, we're not worrying about the future or the past. We're in this moment. Our body has a lot of wisdom. Our body can inform us. Our body has ways of sending sensations and wisdom that connect with our heart. When our body is supporting our heart can open more and be more, we can be more vulnerable. We can be more, able to express our emotions in a truthful way. When we have a grounded body and an open heart, it really informs our mind so that our mind is open and clear. Now, we often hear people say, you have to get out of your head, you have to get out of your head. And it really isn't about getting out of our head. It's about getting into our right mind. When we're grounded in our body and open in our heart, our mind is open to the wisdom that is around us and within us, and we can allow that wisdom to flow through us. When our mind is very noisy and cluttered with all the shoulds and the musts and the shaming, that's our inner critic. And our inner critic is always going to hold us back. But our inner guide, our inner wisdom, will always bring us forward, and it will always be connected to our heart, connected to our body. And so when we're connected in all 3 centers, that's when we are fully present, awake, and aware, and we can walk through life perceiving what is and following our true inner guide. And we don't necessarily, none of us really know, Dawn. None of us have a crystal ball to know what's going to happen in a half an hour or next week or 6 years from now.
The crystal ball would be nice, though, I gotta admit.
I know. We would all love one, wouldn't we? There's no question about it.
Yeah, if I shaved my head bald and it would shine, I don't think that would work, though. Just rub my own head when I wake up. It's like, all right, how's this day going to be? Tell me. It's like, you are a smart moron. All right, thanks. Like, wait a second. Get back to bed. Oh, man. And that's the beautiful part about the Enneagram and, well, just a lot of personality tests and the fact that it's like, yeah, we have basically all 9 of the characteristics. Some are just stronger than others, and I guess it's just really based off real life, to be honest, because everybody's good at something and everybody's bad at something, and everybody's a master at something and everybody's a disaster at something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, I get to find out the difference and then try to work in that difference.
Sure. Yeah, what I love about the Enneagram is that it really highlights for people the inherent strengths of their type and also shines the light, again, with compassion, on some areas that may be blind spots or areas that if they could shine a little more light on them and develop them more, they could really bring themselves into a much more whole state of wholeness.
Yeah, that's right, the whole pie, the whole human pie.
Yeah.
Well, being an Enneagram master and then working your way to eventually being a part of the Forbes Coaches Council, so how did that work out?
Yeah, so, I started studying the Enneagram, as I said, just, went to a weekend workshop with friends, but then it became so, important to me in my own personal development, and I really did it for my own personal growth and development. But as I continued to study the Enneagram, I saw that this is something that can really help people. In the coaching, I had a friend, a colleague, who was kind of a mentor to me. She was about 20 years my senior, and she was a neuroscientist and actually left her academic career to pursue coaching, and I was one of her first clients, and I was one of her first trainees. And, at first I did it just because I thought it would be something valuable to bring to my work and to bring to my students and the people around me. And it was. And then I decided at one point that I wanted to pursue it more. And I had always been, like any good 3, I had always been in leadership roles. And I saw throughout my career, I had some wonderful mentors, still do. And then I worked with other people who, their leadership wasn't well developed. And I became curious about it. Like, how can I learn more about leadership? So I did a lot of leadership training, and I really have merged the two, the coaching and the Enneagram, to help people to again, learn more about their unconscious patterns of behavior. We all have them. There's nothing bad about that. It's just part of being human. But as we learn, for example, some people are more perfectionists, and if they have a really hard time seeing, the gray zone, it's got to be black or white. But once they can see that about themselves and see what's underneath that, which for that particular personality type, if you think back to the infant is good and sacred. There's nothing wrong with the infant. The personality of this type perceives that has been taken away, so they are trying to recreate a sense of goodness their entire life. Once they come to see that through the Enneagram, they actually will have a lot more compassion for themselves, compassion for those around them, and also come to the realization that they never lost that goodness. They've always stayed connected to it. It's really a trick of the personality to have us believe that we're disconnected from it. And people of this personality type have an incredible connection to truth and justice and service of the world, and can be wonderful. Like Mahatma Gandhi is a perfect example of this personality type, where he dedicated his life to changing the world. So what I do now is to really help people, again, with a compassionate lens, really uncover that wider, more expansive aspect of who they are, and not just their limited ego or personality that has maybe gotten them far in life, but hasn't allowed them to live in a way that's truly whole and fulfilling.
Compassionate leadership, indeed. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Very important.
Oh, yeah. It's like a pillow without the spikes. Oh, man, oh, man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So what's going to be next for the good Dr. Kathy herself? So you got this wonderful book out, and you're on the Forbes Coaches Council. Was there any anything big, extremely huge on the horizon, like world domination or something?
No. No, I work between both worlds, my academic world and my leadership world, and I bring all my leadership with me. So I'm not sure exactly what's next. There's some things that I'm looking at, but I think what I will always do is to bring understanding of what makes people be the best leader they can be and live their true life. I'll bring that with me wherever I go. So without that crystal ball, I'm not sure exactly what's next, but I'm open to what comes and will receive it gracefully.
I have to send you one of those gifts of a crystal ball later. Be like, all right, digital crystal ball, tell me all that's going on. Well, with all of your magical knowledge and experience, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again in the current year, what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I would really encourage people, and what I would have done at that age, I wish, was to really get to know myself better. I think self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-understanding is so important for us no matter what we do. And to be a good leader, for example, one really needs to know themselves. So I think I would have focused less on external validation and external achievements and accomplishments, and really taken that deeper dive into the inner journey at an earlier age. So if I was 25 again, I would really have embarked on things like the Enneagram and the other spiritual work that I do to really understand myself more and to let go of the things that held me back. Society looks at, achievements and degrees and all of this as success, and sure, that's true, but true success comes from really following the path that you're meant to be on and finding that within yourself and following it courageously.
Oh, yeah, bolder, solid advice indeed. Yes, indeed. That's right. If you can conquer yourself, then you can conquer the world.
Yeah.
That's right. Just conquer like a small island and make it your own. That's right. And then maybe make the throne have a unicorn horn just for laughs and giggles. Woo! Well, alrighty. So for those who want to keep in contact with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so my website is CatherineHayesCoaching.com, and I have contact through that, or my email is Catherine@CatherineHayesCoaching.com. It's probably the easiest way to reach me.
Beautiful indeed. Well, there you have it, folks. Go on out there and reach out. That's right. Reach out to the wonderful Dr. Kathy. That's right. And then check out our book as well. We're going to put all that in wonderful show notes, so that way you can live a dynamic life and maybe even get closer to knowing a bit more about yourself through the Enneagram. It's a wonderful tool. You can find the tool online, just type in Enneagram test, pick it up, and then follow the book, as Catherine dives deeper into each different number and the strengths and weaknesses of each one and how it's helped her to get to where she currently is. So any parting words for wonderful listeners?
Well, I'd like to say thank you for having me, Dom, and to people out there, I'd like to say it's never too late and never too early to really get to know yourself and understand yourself with a lot of compassion and a lot of opening to the wisdom that we all have within us, our body, our heart, our mind, connecting to it, trusting it, and finding your path and following it. And my best wishes to all.
How's it going, you super special, awesome human? Since you made it to the end of this episode, it looks like you really enjoyed yourself. Since you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share with at least 3 people in your network and tell them what you really liked about this episode. Heck, even shoot myself or the guests an email and let them know what you liked most about this interview, so that way they can stay inspired to keep pushing out great work.